The Senate will come to order. Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. President. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Majors, please call the roll.
Senators Aguilar, Balmer, Baumgartner, Carroll, Cook, Crowder, Donovan, Garcia, Grantham, Guzman, Heath, Hill, Hodge, Holbert, Johnston, Jones, Kafalis, Kerr, the senator from the nicer part of Sacramento, Lundberg, Marble, Martinez Humenic, Merrifield, Neville, Newell, Roberts, Scheffel, Scott,
Excused.
Sonnenberg,
Anyone?
Sonnenberg, Stedman, Todd, Ulibarri, Woods. Mr. President,
Here. 34 present, 0 absent, 1 excused. We have a quorum. Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the reading of the journal for March 18, 2015 be dispensed with and the journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The motion is approved. The journal is adopted. Committee reports.
March 18, 2015, Committee on Health and Human Services, under consideration of the Marriage Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1211 be referred to the Committee of the Whole, favorable recommendation with the recommendation be placed on the consent calendar. March 18, 2015, Committee on Judiciary, after consideration of the Marriage Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1164 be referred to the Committee of the Whole, favorable recommendation.
Senate Services.
March 19, 2015, correctly printed, Senate Joint Resolution 18, correctly engrossed, Senate Bills 90, 197, and 211, Senate Joint Resolution 15, correctly re-engrossed, Senate Bill 78, 173, 192, 198, 199, and 202, correctly revised, House Bills 1004 and 1067, correctly re-revised, House Bills 1048, 1150, 1182, 1209, and 1254.
Introduction of resolutions.
Senate Joint Resolution 19 by Senators Todd and Lambert and Representatives Rosenthal and Nordberg concerning the designation of March 23, 2015 as Colorado Aerospace Day.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate lay over Senate Joint Resolution 19 to March 23rd.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Senate Joint Resolution 19 will lay over as requested by the Majority Leader.
Senate Joint Resolution 20 by Senators Todd and Roberts and Representative Janelle and Lawrence concerning the recognition of National Women's History Month and in connection therewith designating March as Colorado Women's History Month.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate lay over Senate Joint Resolution 20 to March 25th.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Senate Joint Resolution 20 will lay over until March 25th. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I move that the Senate proceed out of order for 2 moments of personal privilege. one by Senator Roberts, and one by Senator Todd.
The motion is that the Senate proceed out of order. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The Senate will proceed out of order. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, it's my honor today to introduce to you some elected members from the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe in my district. I have two reservations in my district, the Ute Mountain Ute and Southern Ute tribes, and we are joined here this morning with the Chairman, Manuel Hart, of the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe, Vice Chairwoman Juanita Plentyholes, Councilwoman Regina Lopez Whiteskunk. And if we could first acknowledge their presence. Thank you, members, and please be seated. I just wanted to give you a little background, particularly those who might not know a little bit about the Ute history in Colorado. Again, I'm very proud to live in the corner of the state where the Utes are presently, but as many of you know, that once Colorado was, the entire state was part of the range that they inhabited. So the original inhabitants of North America are the American Indians, and they've played a unique and distinguished role in our nation's history and culture through vital contributions to government, medicine, education, religion, architecture, environment, and the military. The Ute tribes in particular are a confederation of 7 bands, and the state of Colorado recognizes its oldest and continuous residents, the Southern Ute Indian tribe of Ignacio, and the Ute Mountain Ute tribe of Toyac, Colorado. The state of Colorado is also recognizing the key role to the history of the state that the Ute nations have provided and continue to provide. And I think the important thing to remember, a lot of times people think a little too much of the historical aspect of Native Americans in Colorado. What is really exciting is their future. And the 2 Colorado Ute tribes have their own efforts to increase public safety, education, healthcare, and economic development on their reservations. And they work with the state through our Colorado Commission of Indian Affairs and Ernest House Jr. But the Ute tribes, again, have played a key role to our history and our future. I think it's important for you to know that the 2 tribes are the largest employers of Montezuma, La Plata, and Archuleta counties. Along with holdings, they have holdings on the eastern slope of Colorado and throughout the nation. So I just wanted for us to take a moment to recognize the tribes, and I hope that if you make your way down to my district that you will visit the reservations. They have lots of interesting things to do, a lot of calendared activities on a regular basis. And again, if we could just recognize the value and importance that they bring both historically and to our future, I'd appreciate you recognizing them.
Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we're currently under an additional moment of personal privilege for Senator Todd. Would, in addition to that, move that the Senate continue to proceed out of order for 2 additional moments of personal privilege for Minority Leader Carroll and Senator Newell.
I think since we're already in that mode, we do not need a vote on that, so we shall continue. Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, colleagues. I want to pay a special tribute today to a group of people that are here. Some are in the House and some are here, and they may be going around and seeing all over the Capitol, but today is A-U-R-O-R-A, Aurora Day at the Capitol. Did I spell it right? And we have several guests here. I'm going to ask them just to stand up. I believe one of our elected officials we have some over here. All of our guests from Aurora, stand up. And Willie Willems is Cherry Creek School Board official that is here, and I think the rest of them are probably over in the house as we speak. But we have Mayor Hogan with us today and several city council members. And so as you see them around the Capitol, please extend a hearty welcome to their house as well as ours and being a part of us today.
Hi, Morgan. Oh,
Hi, Bill.
Senator Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. President.
We'll find myself.
See what you started?
Senator Minority Leader Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. This is a big day for those of us who represent Aurora at the Capitol. And just wanted to give you a little bit of information. Actually, Aurora was first incorporated back in 1907. Historically, Old Aurora was originally named Fletcher. Back in the 1880s, and since it was had business origins, then it was businessman Donald Fletcher that went on to incorporate that town of Fletcher in 1903 before it would become Aurora. Population has been growing very strong and very rapidly, and the history of Aurora has very strong veteran and military roots all the way really to its inception, and that tradition continues proudly now. As you know, it's the home of the former Army General Hospital, the Fitzsimmons Army Hospital, and currently has been expanding out to the Anschutz Medical Campus, the Life Sciences District, home of the former Lowry Air Force Base, obviously home to the current Buckley Air Force Base. And you get a sense, you all know the history for what we have there, but that tradition of service continues. We've obviously got the 460th Space Wing and 140th of the Colorado National Guard that are out there. We have a presence of both active and reserve and guard. But just wanted to draw attention to some of the larger industry sectors. Colorado's success story, as we've been pulling through this economic recession, some of the strongest industry sectors are really well exemplified in Aurora. And in addition to Buckley, we've got the medical campus that's out there, Children's Hospital, Health One, all of the medical fields, biosciences out there. The Community College of Aurora is very important to the financial lifeblood of our community. We've got Raytheon, Lockheed Martin. So we've got a combination between aerospace and biosciences, all of the different educational, vocational trades going on, a strong renewable energy sector, and working a lot on transportation logistics. So we're a great cross-section of the world. We're a great cross-section of all of the industries that are doing so well in Colorado. And just want to take a moment to thank everybody for joining us today on Aurora Day at the Capitol, and remind you of some of the great things about Aurora you may not have heard. We've been identified as one of the best cities, actually, in the country to live in. We've been identified as one of the most fit and active cities for people to live in, and these are tidbits about our great community that you may not always see in the headlines. So thank you, Mr. President, for the moment.
Senator Newell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to also say one more thing about the city of Aurora, since it has become part of my district over the last few years, and I continue to learn more and more about it every day. Denver, watch out, because it is predicted to be larger than Denver in the future. So I just want to say, Aurora, you go.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. President. And we have been joined by a few more people. I think they're kind of gravitating back and forth between the House and the Senate. But we have Councilman Bob Roth and Councilwoman Renee Peterson, and Aurora Economic Development Queen of the Rockies, Wendy Mitchell. And so we want to acknowledge them and welcome them to the Capitol. We're delighted to have you here today as well.
Senator Todd.
Thank you. And furthermore, this is kind of like being on a skateboard, you know, we're just skating back and forth. We are honored to have, I think, the finest mayor in the state of Colorado, Steve Hogan from Aurora, who has who has been grace under fire and a strong leader for all of us in Aurora.
Senator Balmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, when I had the honor of being in the House for 8 years, my entire years in the House, I was honored to have Aurora in my part of Aurora in my House district, and then in the Reapportionment Commission's lack of wisdom, they took the city limits of Aurora out of my new Senate district. Although I do have some, and they gave them to my beloved colleague from Littleton. Anyway, I think the minority leader took the rest of it. But you know, it's just Aurora will always have a special place in my heart. I do have some precincts that are unincorporated in Arapahoe County that have an Aurora mailing address. People still look at me as being somebody that champions Aurora. So I am just so delighted that that's the case. But I always point out, and this gets lost, and we might still yet have this battle again, but just to be clear, the Anschutz Medical Campus is in Aurora, okay? For a while they were saying it was in Denver, but it was never in Denver. And the largest economic engine in Colorado, the Anschutz Medical Campus, is in Aurora. So, and there are some areas nearby that are in Denver which are also growing because they are near the Anschutz Medical Campus, which is in Aurora. So they are growing because of Aurora's powerhouse growth nearby. So God bless all the municipalities in that region, and God bless, most importantly, Aurora. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion? Seeing none, moving on. Senator Hodges, pardon me.
Thank you, Mr. President. And to be clear, Anschutz is in Senate District 25 in Aurora.
Oh, it's not in your district. We have a transplant.
Senator Baumgardner. Randy.
You guys, thank you, Mr. President. And I reside in Aurora while I'm here at the Capitol, and so I'm just trying to find out which senator I need to go to complain about this big pothole I've got.
I heard the mayor was in the chamber. Further discussion about Aurora from the members before we relax the rules and allow everybody to talk about Aurora today while we're here.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Moving on. Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Continue on a bit of a theme here. Would move that the Senate continue to proceed out of order for the purpose of considering resolutions, Senate Joint Resolution 16 and Senate Joint Resolution 17.
Lest we need a vote, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The Senate will continue on its course of out of orderness. Mr. Majors, please read the title, Senate Joint Resolution 16.
Senate Joint Resolution 16 by Senator Grantham and Representative Williams concerning recognition of Single Parents Day.
Senator Grantham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Joint Resolution 16 and ask to be read at length.
Whereas parents must invest immeasurable amounts of time, energy, and devotion when raising their children in order to provide them with the love, support, and guidance required to become responsible, productive, and successful adults. And whereas the responsibility of raising children in today's society is particularly difficult when it falls on the shoulders of a single parent. Whereas the number of single-parent families has more than doubled in the past 25 years, and whereas more than 20 million children in this country currently live in single-parent homes, and whereas the greatest need of every child is to be loved, whether the child lives in a single-parent or two-parent family, and whereas the dedication and achievement of single parents deserve our recognition, and whereas in 1984, Congress passed House Joint Resolution 200, Public Law 98 Act 240, which designated March 21st, 1984 as National Single Parent Day, and President Reagan issued Proclamation 5166, which proclaimed March 21st, 1984 as National Single Parent Day. Since then, many states and organizations across the country recognize March 21st each year as Single Parents Day. And whereas in 1993, Colorado became the first state to sign a proclamation officially recognizing March 21st as Single Parents Day. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 70th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that we, the members of the Colorado General Assembly, designate March 21st, 2015 as Single Parents Day in Colorado in recognition of the dedication and achievements of all single parents. Be it further resolved that copies of this joint resolution be sent to Janice S. Moglin of the Coalition for Single Parents Day.
Senator Grantham.
Thank you, Mr.
Colleagues, please
President.
be seated.
Thank you, colleagues. I must admit that perhaps I'm not the most logical choice to be running this resolution. There are those amongst our members that actually are single parents. I grew up in a two-parent family. I live in a two-parent household. But I must tell you where my life intersects on this. We don't share a whole lot necessarily at the mic about our family lives, but I married a single parent. And I must admit that, going through this and seeing all the things that aren't said about single parents in this resolution, things that I know about them just through my own life and my own wife. The strength that she had in doing what she did. Many find themselves in the situation of being a single parent for many different reasons, many different circumstances. Sometimes it's tragedy, sometimes it is illness, and sometimes it is just the unfortunate aspects of strife and divorce that lead to that situation. And I won't go into the details on that about what road my wife went down prior to meeting me, but I must tell you the strength that she had when I did meet her, and the ability to raise a family by yourself. Just try to imagine that. I think all of us have families. Try to imagine that if you've never been in that situation, raising your kids by yourself. Taking them to practice, taking them to school, picking them up at all hours of the day when you're at work. It's not easy. And that is one of the things I recognize, looking back on it with the schedule that she had and dealing with a couple of kids, small kids, trying to work full time, trying to pay the bills, and trying to raise her kids right. And I must tell you, folks, that even if Kevin had never come along, my wife would have moved along just fine because she's that kind of person. And she had that strength. But I'm glad that my life intersected someone like that. Someone that had the strength to be able to raise their kids. And I'm glad to be the one that was able to join her in her life and to be able to help raise her kids. But I must, like I said, admit that she had the strength to do this on her own. I'm glad she chose to let me take part in it. But I pause only to mention that because there are those amongst us that are and still are single parents in our group here. And for whatever the circumstances are that brought you to that situation, I know the difficulties, the trials that come along with that. And not from a direct experience, but certainly from at least the indirect experience. And I applaud you for what it takes to be able to do that. There are certainly some disconcerting things and disconcerting things in the resolution when it talks about the growth of single parentage here in America. And how many children, 20 million children in this country that are in single-parent homes. I mean, that's difficult for them. And we have to remember that and recognize where our society is and has gone, and continue to strive to work to rectify some of these things. But nonetheless, this is about single parents and the admiration that we can have for what they do and the strength that they have to raise their families in very difficult situations. And colleagues, I would simply ask for an aye vote. But before I give the mic over, I would also recognize the person that is the recipient of this resolution is here in our midst today, and that is Janice Moglin of the Coalition for Single Parents Day. And I appreciate her being with us today. And colleagues, if you could recognize her.
Senator Newell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to say I am one of those, most of you know I am one of those single moms out there, have been for years. It does take a lot of strength and fortitude and hard work, and especially when you want to raise your children in a home of integrity and principle. It is difficult. On the other hand, it is difficult on the kids as well, as my friend said, but sometimes it's healthier for the kids than to be in a dysfunctional home with two parents that have a dysfunctional environment. So in my case, I was grateful to also have my kids with me. I do want to say, as my friend from Wheat Ridge knows, that there are many of our constituents, many thousands and thousands of our constituents who every day go through getting up at 4 or 5 in the morning in order to take care of their kids before work, going to work, sometimes having 2 jobs, then doing homework with them afterward. I think that my experience of being a single mom has really helped me empathize with some of my constituents who have also been single parents. And so thank you for bringing this forward. And I'm just very grateful for my experience of being a single mom, no matter the trials and tribulations, because I believe I have 2 of the best daughters you could ever have on the planet. And I'm very, very grateful for them. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of all single parents out there. My background in life was a little bit different. It was not being single parent by a choice. My mother passed away suddenly when I was 7, and my father became a single parent of two teenagers and 2 younger boys. So in our family, we had my oldest sister at that time was 16. So I had a 14-year-old brother. I was 7, and I had an 8.5-year-old brother sibling too. And my God, we were a handful. And so if you could imagine waking up and your world has changed, and all of a sudden you're sitting there, you're trying to. My father, of course, was a sales rep. So his day started out usually Monday morning at about 4:30 in the morning, he would hit the road. And we would see him back sometimes during the week, but often he might be in Tennessee on Friday afternoon, deadheading it back to Florida. So, single parent piece, I have to have a lot of respect for my older sister, what she had to do, because she was entrusted with keeping us in line through the whole week until my father would come back. And there are a lot of opportunities, I think, that, I'm always thankful. I've always liked to tell people that God gives you exactly in this world what you need. And so there were opportunities that came from that, too. The spirit of independence and other things that I think that all children that are members of single-parent families have to learn early and often. Those are important. But I think of the sacrifices my father made, and I think of all the people that were around us who chipped in their own fashion. A lot of them didn't think they did anything. But I can tell you some of the stories that I remember, spending time at other people's homes, being a young kid and being one of those kids that was always inquisitive, wanted to know everything, and then later on in life thinking I knew everything. Sometimes things don't change, do they? But those things that people helped us out with, small little pieces that are in your memory forever. And so I would say to those of you that know single parents and see their kids, reach out, spend a few minutes, take some time with them. It'll make a tremendous difference. You won't even realize what you've done, but it does make a tremendous difference. And we need to support those folks because, of course, it's desirable to have two people to raise a family. That's important, but that's not always God's plan. So, again, I rise in support of all single parents and everything they do. And also, I would ask this body, share your stories, and then also see what you can do to be part of those lives.
Senator Marble.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I rise in support of this resolution. I just want to give a shout out to who I think are the best sons ever. I'm a single mom, and my sons, Aaron and Nathan, I love you. I love you so very much, and I want to thank you for the joy and the happiness, the memories that you have given me, and for putting up with me for all these years. I know it sounds kind of funny, but there comes a transition in life when your kids kind of get a little older and all of a sudden you have to stand down, especially when they come home from the Marine Corps as sergeants or on some level, and it comes to where, all right, okay, I've done my job. And we have so many memories that are so great, and God did bless me, and I know He's blessed so many other parents, single or not. And we all feel the same about those kids. And I just can't tell you how many times we never knew who was going to come through the door with my sons, and we were going to have a part-time adoption. And I just want to tell everybody, Robbie, Steve, Johnny, Troy, Ben, you have added to our lives in such a way, and just expanded our family beyond measure. I'm the luckiest mom in the world, and I just wanted to express the happiness and joy that comes out of parenting, just plain being a parent. And single or not, I just love you, my sons, and the joy of my life. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Senator Grantham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just renew my motion for Senate Joint Resolution 16 and ask for an aye vote.
You have heard the motion. Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Joint Resolution 16 is adopted. Senator Grantham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the present roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Without objection, the current roll call will be added as co-sponsors. Mr. Majors, please read the title to Senate Joint Resolution 17.
Senate Joint Resolution 17 by Senators Cafalas and Lambert and Representatives Young and Landgraf concerning the designation of March 19, 2015 as Colorado Arc Day.
Senator Cafalas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. We move SJR 17 and respectfully ask that it be read at length.
Whereas more than 80,000 individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities live in Colorado, and whereas in 1950 a group of parents and other concerned citizens came together to act as voices for change and created the ARC. And whereas since its inception, the ARC has been instrumental in improving systems that provide community supports and services for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And whereas the ARC is the nation's oldest and largest grassroots organization advocating for the civil rights of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And whereas the ARC of Colorado's 12 local chapters work alongside people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, their families, and other advocates to improve the service delivery system. And whereas Colorado chapters serve the city of Aurora, as well as Adams, Arapahoe, Archuleta, Boulder, Broomfield, Clear Creek, Denver, Dolores, Douglas, El Paso, Gilpin, Jefferson, La Plata, Larimer, Mesa, Montezuma, Pueblo, San Juan, and Weld counties. And whereas the ARC believes people with intellectual and developmental disabilities are defined by their strengths, abilities, and inherent value, not by their disabilities. And whereas the ARC believes people with intellectual and developmental disabilities belong in the community and have fundamental moral, civil, and constitutional rights to be fully included and to actively participate in all aspects of society. And whereas the ARC believes people with intellectual and developmental disabilities with appropriate resources and supports can make decisions about their own lives and must be heard on issues affecting their lives. And whereas the ARC is committed to working with the Colorado General Assembly, the Governor's Office, and state agencies, as well as all partners providing advocacy, services, and supports for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities to increase resources and improve service delivery systems so that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities can live productive, healthy lives in their communities. Now, therefore, be resolved by the Senate of the 70th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that we express our most sincere and deepest appreciation to the men and women at the ARC for their commitment to supporting and improving the quality of life for Coloradans with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and that we hereby declare March 19th, 2015 to be Colorado ARC Day.
Senator Kafalis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues. Please be seated. I just want to share a couple of words, and then I know my colleague, my good friend from Colorado Springs will also speak. I'm grateful and glad that we can take a moment to honor the ARC of Colorado and the various chapters that are throughout the state, our great state. In my years in the legislature, indeed, I've been blessed and I've learned a great deal working with folks from the ARC of Colorado as well as the chapters, working side by side with folks, and I've learned a great deal. I think the ARC of Colorado is a very effective and good organization, and I think one of the most important aspects of the work that the ARC of Colorado does and the various chapters is that we've learned a great deal over time, and it's not a matter of advocating on behalf of others. It is a matter of supporting one another so that we can advocate for ourselves, whether it's in regard to policy changes or perhaps advocacy at the local level. So I wanted to share those words, and before I turn it over to my colleague, I wanted to just share a couple of words about the value and importance of people first language. We're all, again, on a continuum, and we're all learning. But I received this from when I attended a luncheon at the Mental Health America of Colorado Day, and it talks about using people first language. Use people first language. No person is a diagnosis or a disability. We are all people first. Health conditions and differences in ability are aspects of our lives, but they do not define who we are. People first language acknowledges that while no two of us are exactly alike, we all share a common humanity. It helps replace the fear that has driven public discussions about mental health, about issues affecting persons with intellectual
and Developmental Disabilities. And it brings to the discussion a sense of equality and fairness, which indeed, in my opinion, is the basis for civilized conversations. Thank you, colleagues.
Senator Lambert, the good senator from the good part of Sacramento.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, Senator Kafalis, for bringing this resolution before us today. About 4 years ago, I had the opportunity in Colorado Springs to judge a forensics meet with some homeschoolers, met down at the, I think it was the First Methodist Church. And one presentation really struck me, and that was a young man, I think he was probably 14 or 15 years old, made a very, very articulate presentation about individuals with developmental disabilities. It was obvious as he went through his presentation that he had an intellectually challenged sister that was listening in the room. And he was obviously very much loved his sister, and his sister was obviously very proud that her older brother was talking about their relationship, talking about his concern for her on a personal basis, his love and so forth for her. But when it got down to the rest of the story, the young man provided some very interesting facts about how the process that we have used over time for treating people with developmental and intellectual disabilities has so profoundly changed. Frankly, and as the previous speaker, the bill sponsor, has mentioned, this is a mark of the humanity of our culture. We've seen less compassionate countries around the world that have discarded their people. And to some extent, we have as well. The cultural expectation that we have to warehouse people because they're different. Maybe in some cases they do need intensive medical and structural care to their lives, but to separate them from the community is not necessary. And as the young man mentioned, the life expectancy now in our of this population in the United States since about probably the 1920s has increased by decades for every individual. To some extent that's due to the medical care, but I think it's also due to the change from an isolated environment to a more stimulated environment, to have more integration in schools and with families, and it works. It's been my privilege to serve with, and I'm going to mention some names here because they're members of the task force, Senator Stedman, Representative Landgraf, Representative Janice May, Representative Dave Young on the Regional Center Task Force that not only is looking at our care and our level of responsibility or funding at the regional centers, but what's the continuum of care and the necessary involvement of the community with the intellectual and developmental disabled population. And one of the profound things we need to think about is the U.S. Supreme Court, the Olmstead decision, which said all disabled people should be served as close to the community as possible. Sometimes it cannot be done in all cases. Sometimes people need to be hospitalized with very close supervision for years, sometimes decades. Sometimes they have other conditions that need to be treated. But I think through the leadership of the ARC of Colorado in particular, by studies that they've worked on, the most important question comes up: if we can, how do we resource or apply our resources better in the community? And this has been forgotten in the past. And I think we're making significant progress in trying to measure not just effectiveness, but measure how those transitions can be made, how people can be better served in the community. Do they have to be served in state institutions or large hospital institutions, or can they be decentralized closer to their families, closer to their communities? You can see Mr. Majors didn't read all the names that you might look at on the back of your resolution that this resolution will be sent to. But you can also see this is a multi-organizational approach within the communities, not just the ARC of Colorado, but all the local ARC organizations, Colorado Blue Sky Enterprises. I'm just picking a couple out here: Imagine, Developmental Pathways, Rocky Mountain Human Services, the Resource Exchange, Alliance. All of these groups are working together for a common goal. We're trying to learn together with the state representatives how do we form a better public policy, and how should the resources that we have follow that better public policy. So I would like to, in particular, thank the ARC of Colorado, all their representatives here today, and the several ARCs in the different counties around Colorado, as well as those many other affiliated organizations that are working really to change our culture and treat people better.
Is there further discussion? Senator Martinez-Humenick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also just wanted to rise in support of this resolution. My godchild's sister is a Down's child, and she and many of her friends just want to be treated like everyone else. And so I'm very, very happy to see in the time frame that she has gone from being a premature baby to potentially not living, and many of these children are in that situation, to becoming an adult who's now going to be 22 this year, and will have some opportunities that some of these outside groups are going to be able to provide. Again, they just want to be treated like everyone else, even though they might not be like their sister, their brother, one of us. We all have our unique differences, and they have theirs, so I rise in support of this resolution, and I appreciate what all these groups are doing collaboratively to help the residents of Colorado.
Is there further discussion? Senator Kafalis?
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I move Amendment L001.
Mr. Majors, please read the amendment.
Amendment L001 to Senate Joint Resolution
Senator
17.
Kafalis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, there was an oversight when we listed the various folks involved with the ARCs. We neglected to include the name of the executive director of the ARC of Colorado, and my colleague from Colorado Springs, who has a penchant for observing things, noticed that, and so that is what L001 is to just add the name of Mary Jo Reamer, who has been quite the champion on these matters.
Is there further discussion on the amendment? Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, and I sat there trying to keep myself from getting up because I know we have important business to do, but on the mention of Mary Jo's name, I had to come up because I have to tell you the ARC has been an incredible support to me and my family, particularly Advocacy Denver. When I might have told, I know I've said this before, but we tried to put my daughter in private school, and none of the private schools would accept her. We did find a public school that was willing to accept her, and then we were told we needed to move her into a secluded classroom. And we worked with Advocacy Denver to hire an attorney, and were able to keep her in fully included education. And so I want to thank the ARCs for the help that they've given me. And I apologize, but I have to read at least a little bit of something called A Credo for Support, and I'd encourage you to look it up on the internet. It's by Norman Coons, who is a wonderful advocate for people with disabilities. And he says, "Do not see my disability as the problem. Recognize that my disability is an attribute. Do not see my disability as a deficit. It is you who see me as deviant and helpless. Do not try to fix me because I am not broken. Support me. I can make my contribution to the community in my own way. Do not see me as your client. I am your fellow citizen. See me as your neighbor. Remember, none of us can be self-sufficient. Do not try to modify my behavior. Be still and listen. What you define as inappropriate may be my attempt to communicate with you in the only way I can. Do not try to change me. You have no right. Help me learn what I want to know. Do not hide your uncertainty behind professional distance. Be a person who listens and does not take my struggle away from me by trying to make it all better. Do not use theories and strategies on me. Be with me. And when we struggle with each other, let that give use to self-reflection. Do not try to control me. I have a right to my power as a person. What you call noncompliance or manipulation may actually be the only way I can exert some control over my own life. Do not teach me to be obedient, submissive, and polite. I need to feel entitled to say no if I am to protect myself. Do not be charitable towards me. The last thing the world needs is another Jerry Lewis. Do not try to be my friend. I deserve more than that. Get to know me. We may become friends. And do not help me, even if it does make you feel good. Ask me if I need your help. Let me show you how you can assist me. Do not admire me. A desire to live a full life does not warrant adoration. Respect me, for respect presumes equality. Do not tell, correct, and lead. Listen, support, and follow. Do not work on me, work with me. Thank you.
Is there further discussion on the amendment? Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Amendment 01 is adopted. Further discussion on the resolution. Senator Lambert.
I would move that the current roll call be added as co-sponsors.
We will vote on the resolution first. Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I just kind of wanted to comment. There have been so many good things said already this morning. But several years ago, we as a state made a statement. And the statement was with Amendment 51 that came before us to be able to give 0.2% to developmental disabilities, to ARCs throughout Colorado. And it failed. 0.2%. And so when I think about that, what was the missing link? And I know I remember speaking with Frances Owens, our former First Lady, talking about that because she was such an ardent supporter. And we talked about what did we do wrong? What happened? And I think part of it is the education, helping people know and understand that the more we invest in all people, the greater the chance for success for all people. So we still have work to do. All of us are in agreement today, and we'll pass this resolution. And hopefully what we do is not just pass the resolution and not talk about it, but we pass the resolution and we talk about it. And we talk about the viability of all children and all people in Colorado. So I just wanted to remind us that those things come before us as a state. We have choices, and it does help define us. So take the resolution, share it with your constituents, share it in your newsletters, and let people know and understand how important this is and how important it is that we do support all people in Colorado. Thank you.
Is there further discussion on Senate Joint Resolution 17? Seeing none, the motion before us is the adoption of Senate Joint Resolution 17. Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Joint Resolution 17 is adopted. The distinguished gentleman from the good part of Sacramento.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now I ask that the current roll call be used as co-sponsors.
Without objection, the current roll call will be added as co-sponsors. Senator Kafalis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you. I just want to quickly acknowledge that there are some folks from the ARC that are still here in the Senate, certainly Ms. Mary Jo Reamer, and there are some folks from the ARC of Larimer County and from other parts of the state. In particular, I wanted to do a quick acknowledgement of, well, the only one who's here now is Ms. Carrie Brown, her family, her husband Bob, and their 4-year-old son Craig. We've worked together on some things, and they've touched my life, and I've learned a great deal, especially from their 4-year-old son Craig. Thank you.
Senator Newell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you. I promise I will be brief, but members, I wanted to give a big shout out. It is HR Day at the Capitol, Human Resources Day at the Capitol, and these are the folks that you've heard me talk about before and on many occasions, and these are the people who know the experiences of both the employee and employers. And so I just wanted to say that sometimes you meet professionals in human resources who go above and beyond in their professional development, and these are some of those people who have gotten a certificate of professional human resources or senior professional of human resources, like my certification. And I just wanted to introduce you all. These are constituents from across the state, so I will find out if any of them are in your areas, and I will introduce you. So would you please help me welcome HR Day at the Capitol, people.
Third reading of bills. Mr. Majors, please read the title of Senate Bill 211.
Senate Bill 211 by Senator Lambert and Representative Rankin concerning an automatic funding mechanism for payment of future costs attributable to certain of the state's capital assets.
The distinguished gentleman formerly from the good part of Sacramento, Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 211 on third reading and final passage.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 211? Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 211 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Heath, Senator Kafalis. Please have the President, Senator Newell. Mr. Majors, please read the title to House Bill 1067. If you missed your opportunity to co-sponsor and be recognized for it, you may approach the Senate Secretary and notify her. Senator Newell.
House Bill 1067 by Representatives Kraft, Harper, and Longroff for Senator Newell concerning the establishment of a continuing professional development program for licensed psychologists.
Senator Newell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1067 on third and final reading and ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on House Bill 1067? Are there any no votes? Before we proceed to no votes, can we please add Senator Scott to the roll? No votes on House Bill 1067. Majority Leader Scheffel, Senator Lundberg, Senator Woods, Senator scratch that. Senator Woods is a yes vote. Senator Neville, Senator Grantham, Senator Lambert, Senator Balmer, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Cook, Senator Marble, Senator Holbert, Senator Hill, Senator Sonnenberg. No votes. Senator Scott, please add the president. With 21 ayes, 14 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1067 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Todd, Senator Kerr, Senator Stedman, Senator Merrifield, Senator Heath, Senator Kafalis, Senator Guzman. Mr. Majors, please read the title to House Bill 1004.
House Bill 1004 by Representative Tyler and Senator Todd concerning authorization for firefighter license plates to be issued for motorcycles in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I move House Bill 1004 and ask for an aye vote on third reading.
Is there further discussion? Are there any no votes? Senator Stedman, Senator Holbert, Senator Hodge, Senator John, Senator Neville, Senator Hill, with 29 ayes, 6 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1004 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Crowder, Senator Kerr, Senator Merrifield, Senator Newell, Mr. Majors, please read the title of Senate Bill 197.
Senate Bill 197 by Senators Crowder and John and Representatives Fields and Willett concerning the prescriptive authority of advanced practice nurses.
Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move SB 15-197 forward and ask for an aye vote. Thank you.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 197? Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 197 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Merrifield, Mr. Majority Leader, Senator Neville, Senator Todd, Senator Kafalis, Senator Roberts, Senator Marble, Senator Guzman, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Lumberg, Senator Cook, Senator Newell, Senator Aguilar, Senator Donovan, Senator Grantham, Senator Hill, Senator Kerr, Senator Johnston, Senator Heath. Please add the president. Mr. Majors, please read the title of Senate Bill 90.
Senate Bill 90 by Senator Todd and Representative Tyler concerning the adoption of standards governing temporary permits on motor vehicles for effective readability and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I move Senate Bill 90 on third reading and ask for an aye vote.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 90? Are there any no votes? Senator Hill. With 34 ayes, 1 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 90 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Grantham, Senator Martinez-Humenick, General order, second reading of bills, consent calendar. Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would request that the general order second reading of bills consent calendar be placed at the end of the general order second reading of bills calendar.
Are we?
I just requested that we move it, so let's do that.
Are we putting it, is it a general order or is it a consent bill?
It's a consent.
Okay, so we're just changing the. All we're doing is changing the order.
No, it's coming up.
That's not what he said.
Let me clarify.
The request is to remove it from the consent calendar. It's placed at the end of the general order. We requested that the consent calendar be placed at the end of the general order second reading. Majority Leader Shuffle.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me clarify. The request is to move the general orders second reading of bills consent calendar off of the, which is set House Bill 1244, remove it from the consent calendar and place House Bill 1244 at the end of the general orders second reading of bills calendar.
You've heard the motion. All those, actually, that's not a, we don't need a vote on that. 1244 will be removed from the consent calendar and placed on the general orders second reading of bills calendar, which takes us Majority Leader Shuffle.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I'd move that the Senate take up House Bill 1211 on special orders. Motion is to take up House Bill 1211 on special orders at the hour of 10:23. The special situation, Mr. President and colleagues, necessitated by this bill, the detail of which you will hear and requested in working in tandem with the governor's office. So that is the motion.
You have heard the motion. This takes a two-thirds vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. That motion is adopted. The Senate will take up House Bill 1211 on a special orders calendar at 10:23, which takes us to special orders.
We're doing special orders, though, right? Right now?
The House will, or excuse me, the House. The Senate will stand in recess so we can pass out the calendar with the special orders bill.
was, or 9 hours of testimony.
The Senate will come back to order. Senator Balmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of special orders, second reading of bill calendar.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? The Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of special orders, second reading of bill calendar. Senator Balmer will take the chair.
I suppose I could. I'm sure I want to be the guy who does that.
The committee will come to order, and the coat rule is relaxed for the rest of you. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to House Bill 1211?
House Bill 1211 by Representative Young and Senator Sonnenberg concerning license requirements for durable medical equipment suppliers.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill or House Bill 1211. Members and Mr. Majority Leader, I appreciate your help, Mr. President, your help with expediting this bill. This bill is a cleanup bill actually from last year, but the urgency comes from a lawsuit that'll be averted the 25th of this month if the governor signs it prior to that time. So it's important that we do this cleanup and understand that there hasn't been any objection. The bill has moved forward. What the bill does is modifies some of the definitions for who a supplier is for durable medical equipment and how we bill those to those in Medicare and Medicaid services. As I said, this is really a simple bill, but the urgency comes that this has to be signed to avoid the lawsuit that has a potential deadline on it of the 25th. So I would just ask for your aye vote.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We heard this bill in Health Committee and members last year trying to protect our consumers. We asked that medical companies that sold equipment be located in our state. Inadvertently, as often happens with legislation, our legislation also made it illegal for those companies that simply mail diabetes supplies and equipment to work in our state without a license, and so this bill will help us to correct that error.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I simply say that when we heard this in committee, there was full concurrence not only among the committee but of through the entire hearing. So yeah, it's a bill that we should pass, and I urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1211? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1211. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 1211 is adopted.
Are we done?
Waiting for him to rise and report, right? Yeah. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the committee rise and report.
The motion before the body is to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and we will rise and report.
Hey, Mark. See you, Esther. The Senate will come back to order. Senator Balmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the committee has met and had one bill under consideration. Mr. Majors, would you please read the report?
March 19, 2015, Mr. President, your committee of the whole basically reports that under consideration of the following task bill being the second reading thereof makes following recommendation thereon. House Bill 1211 passed the second reading in order to revise, place on the counter for third reading and final passage.
Senator Balmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move for the adoption of the report.
Is there further discussion on the report of the Committee of the Whole? Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. House Bill 1211 passed on second reading and ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. General orders, second reading of bills. Senator Balmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of General Orders, second reading of bills calendar.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of General Orders, second reading of bills. Senator Balmer will take the chair.
Committee will come to order and the court rule is relaxed. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 129, or did we lay that over already?
Senate Bill 129 by Senator Lundberg concerning preserving the parent-child relationship and domestic relations actions.
We're at Senate Bill 45, okay. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the committee lay over Senate Bill 129 to March 23.
Okay, thank you. The motion is to lay Senate Bill 129 over to March 23rd. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The motion is adopted. Senate Bill 129 is laid over until March 23rd. Mr. Majors, please read the title to Senate Bill 45.
Senate Bill 45 by Senator Lundberg concerning the creation of income tax credits for non-public education.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 45.
Very good. Please proceed.
And trying to look, and do we have committee reports? Okay, no committee reports. Mr. Chair, Senate Bill 45 is concerning the creation of income tax credits for non-public education. And allow me to explain this a little more in detail. This is an important issue for us to look at. It's you know, in Colorado, we have really three major formats of education for the K through 12 grade levels. We have public education, which we spend a great deal of time on, and a significant amount of the general fund goes that direction. But there are two other educational formats as well, which serve the citizens of Colorado very well. One is private school, and the other one is homeschools. And there are literally tens of thousands of students involved in those formats. But as far as public policy, we really don't encourage that. We simply tolerate it. And unfortunately, I believe we miss a great opportunity by not paying a little more attention there and giving some encouragement, some incentives. Frankly, our state budget is well served, as well as the students and the families for whom they take advantage of the private schools and the homeschool opportunities that are allowed in the state of Colorado. If you look at the outcomes of students who've gone through those educational formats, it's very positive. You don't see any hand-wringing or concerns over the products of public school or of the homeschools and of the private schools. Indeed, they are a standard to be attained, really. And I don't believe I need to spend much time on that, as I'm sure all of the members of this body have interacted with families who are enjoying those areas. But when it comes to public policy, we simply allow it rather than encourage it at all. This bill is to add some incentive, some encouragement. And that is for the private school student. If they move from a public school to a private school, they can enjoy a tax credit, their family, or anyone who provides a scholarship for that student. That tax credit is available as well, and it can be no more than half of the previous year's state average of per pupil revenues. And so if the per pupil funding for the public school is, let's just take a number of $7,000, then the tax credit can be no more than half of that. And I'm sure you can see what financial boon this is to the general fund as well, because, of course, we backfill the funding to school districts for almost every school district. And then if it's on the homeschool side, it's capped at a $1,000 tax credit, which again is a remarkable difference than the full per pupil funding we provide for the public school student. And there's one other component within this bill, and that is if it's a part-time student, because in Colorado we really have two different funding mechanisms or levels. One is for full-time students and the other is for half-time students. And so if it's a half-time student in the public school system, if they migrate to the private side, then only half of the credits that I just described would be available to them. And that would mean 25% for the private school and a $500 tax credit for the homeschool side of it. Mr. Chairman, I've been involved in education on the homeschool arena, or in the homeschool arena, for the last 25 plus years. And I can tell you that there are incredible opportunities that many families have availed themselves of, and I believe that Senate Bill 45 would go a long way down the road towards making that a public policy, to say we support public school, we support private school, we support homeschool, because those are all valid and important ways that the next generation of Colorado citizens is being trained and prepared. And I believe it's a responsible way for the state policy to be placed, as well as if you look at the just the dynamics of the savings to the general fund, this is a way that we can be more efficient and effective with our educational dollars and take the taxpayers' dollars and put them to work in the most effective fashion possible. And I look forward to a little bit of discussion on this in second reading, and indeed I trust that the Senate will pass this measure on to the House so that we can continue this very important discussion we have on providing the best educational opportunities for every student in the state of Colorado. Thank you.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 45? Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of Senate Bill 45 for several reasons. Our focus in government is to make policy and decisions on what we are going to support. Well, as a society, we support educating our young so that they can be active and successful participants in society. We all hold that as a key value. We also believe, and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, some speakers might decide to, we also believe that it's extremely important that we incent things which work, and we focus on expanding what works as a level of good governance. Families should be able to make a decision. There's another thing that we support in our society, and school choice is a civil rights issue to me. And it's a civil rights issue, it's the civil rights issue of our time. Being able to send your children to a successful program that works. We should not disincent those who make that decision. We should try to support. This is one small step to do that. And as the sponsor has noted, this provides an opportunity, a fiscal note that actually supports all education, funding of education. So the question that we have before us today is, do we support the civil rights of families to make decisions without being extremely penalized? And do we support giving them tools which provide an opportunity for them to make those decisions and send their children to the area that best satisfies their needs and their family needs and the individual needs? Many families will decide to send kids to public school, some to private schools, some to online schools, and some to home schools. There is a cost to the families for doing that. However, I think it's extremely important that we separate the decisions of making, first of all, as a society, that we are going to support education. That's the first decision. We've clearly made that decision. The second decision is, do we support the choice and the opportunity for families to make that choice and their civil rights to make sure that they can send their child to where they want to go to school, and then also support that decision with the first decision that we originally made, saying that we support education for all children and all families. So I rise in support of Senate 45 and hope that you do the same.
Further discussion. Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 45. I agree with Senator Neville. We should have choice of what school we send our children to, and in the public school system, you have that. In the private school system, they have the choice, and they can decide whether to take you or not. When my daughter was in kindergarten, my daughter who's disabled, we approached 4 different private schools. We offered to pay her tuition, to bring in a classroom assistant, to bring in PT, OT, and special education, and they all refused her admission. And so I think that this will lead to discrimination, further discrimination and segregation of children with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And in addition, it will take much needed funds away from our public schools who are struggling to support these children in their classrooms and are unable to provide adequate financing and support for children with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And so if you support a guarantee to a free, appropriate public education for every child, no matter what their disability or other issues, I think you should vote against Senate Bill 45. Thank you.
Further discussion. Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to jump into queue very quickly to answer some of the concerns that were expressed by the good senator from Denver concerning students who have special needs. And and it is more expensive to educate, to provide that education for those students. Yes, I agree. We need to have the funds and the resources available for each student as they are, and if they're in the public system, we carry the full load on that. What Senate Bill 45 does is it actually frees up more funding on a per pupil basis for students in the public school system. And to construe this as having some sort of a discriminative character to it is not a correct notion. Let's talk about the students who have special needs and the parents choose to teach their children themselves. And I have seen this many, many times. And why did they do that? Because they knew that was the very best for their children. And yet the state simply says, you're on your own. This bill helps address that circumstance by giving some tax credit relief for that family so that they have the broader choice of where they want to go for the education for their children. It's a misnomer to say that this Senate Bill 45 takes money away from the public school. It's true that if a student moves from the public system to the private system, that school no longer will receive that funding for that student, but guess what? That student isn't there anymore. So the school no longer has the liability of the training for that particular student. But because the tax credit is much less than what that per pupil funding would be, the school system overall has well, I should say the general fund, and therefore the legislature has the ability to provide a higher level of funding on a per pupil basis for the public schools. I urge an aye vote for Senate Bill 45.
Senator Lambert, and then I'll get to you, Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the last speaker was exactly right. If you don't believe this, look at the fiscal note on page 5. I'm just going to read one sentence. Savings to the state will increase each year as more students are induced by the credit to transfer from public to private school and are estimated to equal $409 million per year in FY 2028-29, the year the bill is fully phased in. That is really interesting because that's not a decrease in education. That provides more money that can be used through our general fund to fund education. We have a real crisis in this state that K-12 funding is being crowded out. This bill should save money so we can reallocate it and use it for other purposes, including perhaps other educational programs. It gives us the discretion to do that. It's interesting also that without this bill, this is the cost of not allowing choice in education. 409 at the conclusion of this implementation period, $409 million per year. That's the cost of not allowing parents and children to attend the schools that they would like to go to if they only had the funds to do it. This bill provides those funds, allows more educational choice, I think in the long run improves the quality of education at a lower cost to the state. This is a win-win for everybody. I would ask for an aye vote on Senate Bill 45.
Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of responses. If this is such a significant savings for public schools, I'm really puzzled as to why none of the advocates for public education, such as CASB and CASE, have come out so strongly in favor of it. I haven't seen that support. And in addition, this concept of how it's going to provide more funding for public schools really is difficult for me to comprehend, given that the concept of economies of scale is what takes place. As when I was in the classroom, if I lost 2 students, for instance, who transferred to a private school, my expenses in the classroom didn't drop by 2 students' percentages. It remained the same. The janitor still came and cleaned my room. I still had to purchase music personally out of my own funds. The school district still provided the same support for the school, for my classroom. The costs for my classroom did not decrease by 2 students. It remained the same. So the savings, I think, is to say that this is going to create a savings is really puzzling to me. I just can't comprehend that. And also, the good lady senator from Denver who spoke about her child being denied admission to a private school, that question was not really answered. The question would be, would those private schools accept any student, regardless of disability, even if this bill were to pass? And given that that's really concerned me, I would like to introduce, and I move Amendment 16. And
there is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Mazurs, would you please read amendment number 16?
Amendment L016 to Senate Bill 45 by Senator Kerr, amend printed bill page 7 after.
Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well,
Senator Merrifield, can you move that again? Oh, you've already moved it.
I
Okay.
move and will remove,
Yep.
or no, I will I move again, Amendment 16.
Thank you. Please.
Actually, I should have probably let this be read. What it says is a private school that issues credit certificates pursuant to Section 2 of this section shall not discriminate against any potential qualified child, back to our earlier question, who seeks admission to the private school on the basis of mental, physical disability, race, creed, color, sex, sexual orientation, religion, national origin, ancestry, income, or legal status. I taught for 30 years, and we never denied ever any student who met these characteristics. Public education accepts every student who walks in the door. If you are a private school and you're going to accept this credit, then you must do the same. I would urge approval of Amendment 16.
Further discussion on Amendment 16. Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I urge a no vote on Amendment 16. And what I would say about this is a couple of things. One is this is an educational tax credit. This is not the traditional vouchers that are that actually do contain a whole lot of controls on the private schools. And that is a problem we get into where the private schools become encumbered with all of the regulations of the public schools. In Colorado, we actually enjoy a very reasonable regulation system for private schools, and this heads down the wrong road in that direction. And I don't really believe that this amendment will improve the circumstance. Rather, it will begin that process of encumbering private schools with all of the regulations that we've put on the public schools. Anyway, in my opinion, this amendment would not improve the bill. It would start to diminish the effectiveness and really move away from the concept of a tax credit. And let me explain that just a little bit so that you understand what I mean by that. And this has been proven in other states. You know, the ideas that are put out here are not brand new. There are different variations of tax credits and other voucher systems across the country that have been successfully followed through many, many years. And unfortunately, Colorado has been very, you know, I'd call it backward in not acknowledging that there are some real positives to be gained by encouraging the private side of education as well. And the reason Senate Bill 45 is not a voucher, but a tax credit, is to not encumber the private schools with excessive regulations. And these are not dollars that have come from the government treasury. These are dollars that the taxpayer has been able to redirect in the way that they saw best. So if we start going down this road of putting on mandates and regulations on private schools, we will find ourselves with not a more efficient way to teach children, but a more expensive way. I urge no vote on Amendment 16.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members, I rise in support of Amendment 16. I would agree that we don't want to burden schools with regulation, but I do think that we should expect our schools to offer basic civil rights, and this would have prevented those schools from discriminating against my daughter who was disabled. I understand that on paper this saves money. The reality is I sent 2 of my children to private school and paid for that out of pocket. And so if this bill had been in line, I could have pulled them out for a year or 2, put them back in, and then not only save myself that money. So I think there will be unintended consequences that will end up costing this more. In addition, when you cherry pick and pull out the children you want into private school and leave behind the children that create a burden on your school, if that's what you want to call having diversity in your school, you leave behind a group that requires more support with less resources. The economy of scales is lost, but the amount of work needed is higher. But fundamentally, I support Amendment 16 because I believe that we should not allow discrimination, and Senate Bill 45 would have discriminated against me and my family.
Further discussion on Amendment 16. Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Civil rights means respecting everyone's decision, including the decision of those families. I oppose this amendment because basically it works directly against that decision making. What is appropriate to me as a parent may not be appropriate for someone else. Allowing each of these organizations to do what they do best, and then allowing those individuals, those parents and their children to make those decisions, and then not penalizing them for that, I think is extremely important. Also, let me remind you of what we do already in the state of Colorado. We have a rich history of supporting choice and not dictating every single item on where those dollars go. We have a little thing called the GI Bill. It does not dictate what this amendment calls for. We have another thing called Pell Grants, and we also have the COF program for higher education. It works. Choice works. It works for all people. It works for all people, and it even works for those with special needs, those with special requirements, if we allow it to work. I ask you to oppose this amendment and to support school choice in Senate Bill 45.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we hear here at the podium, we hear about allowing organizations to do what they do best. And we've heard that the tiers, that we have public education, we have private schools, and we have homeschools. And I absolutely agree that I think that's a good system here in Colorado. I disagree with the earlier notion that here in Colorado we simply tolerate private school and homeschool. I think, as evidenced by the resolutions that we have, the bipartisanly supported resolutions, that we have every year supporting homeschool folks and also supporting all forms of choice in school. So if these organizations are doing what they do best, and we are now going to be shifting taxpayer dollars to these schools, because as this the senator from Loveland, close enough, the senator, the sponsor of the bill, who mentioned that each of these, that this is not a traditional voucher. Correct. I perfectly agree. It's not a traditional voucher. This is what's been called a backdoor voucher. That is what tax credits are, is a different way of shifting taxpayer money from the public sector to the private sector. And that is why I think it is so important that if taxpayer money is being shifted to a school that does a good job, admittedly, many of these private schools do an excellent job with the students that come in and can pay the price tag that they have. And many of these schools, the vast majority of which have families that are wealthy, very well off, and can afford these very high price tags. If we look in public education and through the accountability measures we have in public education, it matches almost perfectly. The schools where the majority of families come from wealthy families tend to do pretty well. The schools where the majority of families are not so well off, those schools tend to not perform as highly on the accountability measures that we have. That is almost a perfect match. So if we are going to go through with this, if we are going to shift the scarce taxpayer funds from public schools to private schools, those private schools should be held to the same level of accountability. Because as has been mentioned here before, a public school takes every student that walks in the door, regardless of that student's mental or physical disability, or ability for that matter, race, creed, color, sex, sexual orientation, religion, national origin, ancestry, income, or legal status. So as was said, these institutions, these private schools, let them do what they do best. That's fine if it's private funds. But if we're doing this backdoor voucher and using taxpayer money to help fund these schools, to encourage people to move to these schools, then those institutions, those private schools, need to make sure that they are not discriminating against any student on the basis of mental or physical disability or ability, race, creed, color, sex, sexual orientation, religion, national origin, ancestry, income, or legal status. Please vote yes on Amendment 16.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, colleagues. I rise in support of L016 because I think it makes an important modification to Senate Bill 45. Senate Bill 45 is being housed in the conversations of school choice, and as a parent of 2 school-aged children, I understand the challenges and needs of trying to make sure you find the best place for your kids to be educated. It's a challenge that my family went through personally, and I want to talk specifically about why L016 is so incredibly important in neighborhoods like mine. So when we talk about private schools and receiving a tax credit for those private schools, my family on a legislator's salary cannot afford Kent Denver. I think the tuition at Kent Denver is the same as what we make as state legislators. But when I looked at potential options for my son, I did look at private school options for my kid when he was having a really tough time in our local neighborhood public school. And so we started looking around. We went in a 10-mile radius all around our house looking for educational opportunities to enroll our son. We went to every single charter school, every single other school district to opt him into, and we went to the private schools. Every single private school in a 10-mile radius from our house is religiously affiliated. And we went and we said we'd be happy to go pay the tuition for our son. We want to make sure he has a great educational home. We want him to learn and be inquisitive and enjoy this world. And we heard time and again from private schools that, yeah, we would like your child. We just don't want your gay family. And so his enrollment in private school was directly related and disqualified based on the sexual orientation not of him, but of his parents. So when we talk about a tax credit for private education, without this amendment, it means that not all Colorado kids and not all Colorado families would have the benefit to actually do what is suggested under Senate Bill 45. With L016, whether or not your kid has a disability or you're a same-sex couple, you would have the ability to enroll your kid in private school and receive a tax credit. But without this, it's a freedom to discriminate, that some, a very select few, would be able to use the tax credit to their advantage. I encourage everyone in this chamber to go through the process that we went through. Go to every single private school in a 10-mile radius and be turned down at every single step. What it looks like when we're actually talking about private schools, there are very few that aren't religiously affiliated, and that will have certain requirements about who can and cannot. When we talk about education, it should be for everyone, not a select few.
Further discussion on Amendment 16, seeing none. Oh, Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just try to wrap up on what some of the things I heard. I heard the sponsor of the bill basically expressing frustrations with being encumbered by these requirements. And so my suggestion would be, if you are a private school or if you're a legislator pushing this legislation, you don't want these schools to be encumbered, then don't accept any public money. I think what we're basically saying in this argument opposing this amendment, Amendment 16, is that private schools should be allowed to discriminate, and I totally disagree with that concept. I think it's especially un-American, in my opinion, and I think the whole basis, the crux of this argument, is on this difference, that public schools accept everybody. That's why they're called public. Private schools discriminate. That's why they're called private. If you wish to have the capacity to discriminate, remain private and do not accept public funding. So I would urge acceptance and a yes vote for Amendment 16.
Okay, further discussion on Amendment 16? Seeing none. The motion before the body, division has been requested. Will all those in the chamber not entitled to vote, please be seated. A division has been requested. With all those in the chamber not entitled to vote, please be seated. All those in favor of Amendment 16, please stand. Please be seated. All those opposed, please stand. Amendment 16 fails. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This body's enjoyed good debate on Senate Bill 45, so much so that I ask that the committee lay over Senate Bill 45 to March 20th, so that folks can get to committees and other obligations and appointments.
Okay, thank you. The motion is to lay over Senate Bill 45 to March 20. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 45 will be laid over until tomorrow, March 20th. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the committee lay over the remaining bills on the general order second reading of bills calendar to March 20th.
Okay, members, the motion before the body is to lay over the balance of the second reading calendar till tomorrow, March 20th. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the remainder of the second reading calendar will be laid over until tomorrow, March 20th. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee rise and report.
The committee will rise and report. All those in favor of rising and reporting say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. The aye defeats the no, and the motion passes. We will rise and report. Put this back over here. I didn't have to gavel that much. Yeah. Still figuring all this stuff out.
The Senate will come back to order. Senator Balmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the committee had a number of bills before it for consideration. Would Mr. Majors please read the report?
March 19, 2015, Mr. President, your committee, the whole basic reports that are in consideration the following task bills being the second reading thereof makes following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 45, House Bill 1202, Senate Bill 91, House Bill 1244, laid over until March 20, 2015, retaining their place on the calendar. Senate Bill 129, laid over until March 23, 2015, retaining its place on the calendar.
Senator Balmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move for the adoption of the report.
Is there further discussion on the report of the Committee of the Whole for an incredibly productive session? Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, Committee of the Whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 45, House Bill 1202, Senate Bill 91, House Bill 1244, laid over until March 20th and retaining their place on the calendar. Senate Bill 129, laid over until March 23rd and retaining its place on the calendar. Consideration of House amendments to Senate resolutions. Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate lay over the balance of the calendar to March 20.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The balance of the calendar will lay over until March 20th. Signing of bills.
March 19, 2015, the President has signed Senate Bills 2, 43, 49, 51, 53, 55, 71, 111, and 191.
Message from the House.
March 19, 2015, Mr. President, the House has adopted and transmits herewith House Joint Resolution 1016. The House has adopted and returns herewith Senate Joint Resolution 16. Upon reconsideration, the House rejected the first conference committee report to Senate Bill 85 and dissolved the first conference committee. The House acceded to request for a second conference committee. The Speaker appointed Representatives Winter as chairman, Buck and Kraftharp as House conferees on the second conference committee on Senate Bill 85. The House has adopted the first report of the first conference committee on Senate Bill 161 as printed in the House Journal and has repassed the bill as so amended. The bill is returned herewith. The House has adopted and returns herewith Senate Joint Resolution 17. The House has postponed indefinitely Senate Bills 18, 80, and 101. The bills are returned herewith. The House has voted to concur in Senate amendments to House Bills 1092 and 1182 and has repassed the bills as so amended. The House voted to concur in Senate amendments to House Bill 1031 as printed in the House Journal on March 4th. The House has repassed the bill as printed in the House Journal March 19th as so amended.
Committee reports.
March 18, 2015, Committee on Business, Labor, and Technology, after consideration of the Marriage Committee, recommends the following: Senate Bill 177 to be amended as follows, now so amended, before the Committee of the Whole favorable recommendation. March 18, 2015, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, after consideration of the Marriage Committee, recommends the following: House Bill 1026 be referred favorably to the Committee on Finance. March 18, 2015, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, after consideration of the Marriage Committee, recommends the following: House Bill 1130 be referred to the Committee of the Whole favorable recommendation.
Message from the governor.
March 18, 2015, Colorado Senate. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor to inform you that I have approved and filed with the Secretary of State the following acts. Senate Bill 57 concerning the reporting requirements of the Colorado Clean Claims Task Force, approved March 18, 2015 at 3:55 p.m. Senate Bill 142 concerning a change in state law to make requirements for monies held in escrow for the payment of ad valorem property taxes the same as requirements of the Federal Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act of 1974, approved March 18, 2015 at 3:34 p.m. Sincerely, John W. Hickenlooper, Governor.
Announcements. Senator Baumgardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, on your desk, you found a flyer that said that the Colorado Sportsman's Caucus will be meeting today at noon. We do have the hot dogs back, and yeah, it's the hot dog day, yeah. Be talking about the Sportsman's Act of 2015. Thank you. Please come and have a hot dog.
Further announcements. Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, on your desk today, you will find a picture of Governor John Hickenlooper, but more importantly, at the top it talks about Pedal the Plains, the 2015 route to be announced soon. They'll have a new route this year, so all the details will be coming soon, but wanted to make sure you are aware of the printed announcement on your desk. There's a phone number at the bottom there for Richard Sandrock to talk to. He's the Deputy Director of Community Partnerships if you'd like a little more information before all of the information comes out. But check it out. Thanks.
Further announcements. Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have a brief announcement about tonight at the Colorado History Center. They're having a invitation to celebrate with our Colorado veterans. The governor's going to make his remarks there at 6 p.m. at the Colorado History Center, and all legislators are invited. It's going to be a big turnout to support the veterans, and it sounds like a lot of fun, so hope to see you all there tonight, especially you veterans.
Any further announcements? Senator Marble. Further announcements. Senator Marble.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for a moment of personal privilege.
A moment. Granted.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. I want to ask all of you to give a big hand to a person who is a very good friend of mine from my district and his two children. It is Dan Cochran. His two children are Ben and Olivia, and they came down to spend the morning with us on the floor of the Senate during the kids' spring break from school. So they are continuing their education by watching how we make law. So please give them a round of applause and thank them for being here during their most valued spring break time.
Further announcements. Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to express what a pleasure it is to serve with you, sir.
You may continue. Seeing no further announcements, Senator Scott.
That was a long time. Thank you, Mr. President. Colorado University tomorrow, we have the CU Advocates Day at the Capitol. I know you all want to make that. That'll be in the old Supreme Court chamber at 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. And just so everybody understands, I am a Buckeye. So this was difficult, but I pulled through for the Ohio State University.
Majority Leader Scheffel.
good, Cindy? Thank you, Mr. President. Move the Senate adjourn to 9 a.m. Friday, March 20.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The Senate will be adjourned until 9 a.m. Friday, March 20th.